Hi everyone, we're here again doing a program for you to do something with dogs and pets. We're at Home Instead Senior Care. I always have to mention them because they're so helpful to us in letting us use their upstairs for our filming. And today we want to talk about heat stroke and heat exhaustion and issues involving heat with our dogs, particularly dogs. I'm sure that, and we'll get to this whenever we're talking today, but so many of us have seen situations that we think are so hazardous to our dogs involving the hot summer heat, and we wanted to make sure that we got that information out to everyone today. So with me is my favorite person to work with, Donnie Consla. Where are you now?
I'm at Animal Friends in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh, off of
Camp Horn Road.
Camp Horn Road, okay. All right, so we're going to start, and let's start with, where would you start with, heat stroke?
Yeah, so heat stroke and heat exhaustion, I think are kind of just lay terms for hyperthermia, or an increased body temperature from external heat versus a fever, which would be the body increasing its own temperature,
gotcha.
Right? So, we typically see this in the hotter months, or, if an animal is confined to some situation where there's a constant heat source, like a blower or something like that. But it causes the body temperature to rise, and then that has a lot of problematic effects in the body. The body at first is going to try and compensate for the increased heat to try and cool itself down. For us, we would sweat a lot, right? Dogs don't have a whole lot of sweat glands.
Do they sweat at all?
A little bit on the pads of their feet,
okay.
And that's about it.
All right.
So, you might notice the pads of their feet getting wet, and this holds true for cats as well. Panting is one of the main ways that dogs regulate their body temperature, so they'll start panting. We call that dead space ventilation, so they're not actually, taking breaths that cause gas exchange, but they're just moving, air back and forth really quick across all the capillaries in the mouth and the tongue, where all those blood vessels are, to try and get cool air in to get that heat out. However, at a certain point, that can't keep up with things, and so then the body starts to suffer. So blood vessels start to dilate, so you can start to get organ damage. Tends to occur first in the gastrointestinal tract, because that's kind of like the least important thing, when you're trying to survive, is your stomach and intestines and what they're doing. So the blood gets shunted away from them to other organs to try and cool things off. And then, as it goes on, other organs can start to suffer, and eventually that leads to neurologic issues with the brain getting too hot. So
Isn't there something about some dogs, like pugs and that, or Shih Tzus? There's a condition called, because their nose is so smashed.
Those short, squished-faced dogs are brachycephalic breeds. That just means short-nosed. And they tend to have a few different issues that result in what we call brachycephalic syndrome. So their nose is short, their nostrils or nares often are narrowed. They tend to have extra tissue in a couple of spots in the back of their mouth, which limits the efficiency of airflow when they're trying to pant.
Are they more prone to heat stroke and heat exhaustion?
Significantly more so.
Okay, so we have to really watch
because a dog with a regular anatomy is doing all this panting and stuff to try and keep up. The pug, the bulldog, whatever, it's already at a disadvantage. It can't even do those things very well on a normal day, let alone a hot one.
What's that called again?
Brachycephalic syndrome.
And that's the dog that has the
short squish face.
Squish. Okay, good. All right, so what are some of the other signs that I know my dog's in trouble?
Yeah, so usually I think the first thing you'll notice is they'll go from being real energetic and bubbly to starting to get like a little lethargic. So I've seen dogs before, maybe they were playing fetch and they were sprinting out and back, and then they start just to kind of like lull back, just get a little weak. They're panting very, very hard. Like, it looks like they're working to cool off. As that goes on, you can see sometimes some gastrointestinal issues like vomiting or diarrhea. Sometimes that doesn't come till later. And then like weakness, staggering, ataxia, or like wobbliness, so they start to get like a drunken stagger, and then they can collapse, pass out, and if it gets real bad, seizures.
So what do I do?
So,
what's my first aid?
yeah, we'll get to prevention, but if this happens, basically we want to cool the dog down.
Okay.
Or cat, but we have to be careful because if we try to cool them too quickly, we will activate the body's heat up mechanisms, right? So you don't want to throw them in like an ice bath because then all the muscles will start shivering, which will increase the body temperature further.
What about ice water?
Tepid water.
Tepid water.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think I saw that on Dr. Pole one time. Someone came in and they thought they were helping a little ducks hunt, and I think they poured cold water on them or something.
Yeah.
And he says, no, you can't do that quickly.
Yeah. So what I do is, if you can, rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, put it on the pads of the feet. That evaporates much quicker than water. So that's going to carry the heat off quicker. Tepid water, and you don't want to like submerge them in water, but get them wet, get a fan on them to blow, and then get to your vet, basically.
I think I had something like that now that I'm thinking about it last summer, and I had some of those signs, and I think I also took, I want to say like an ice bag or something, and I think I put it in their, in
the armpit.
In the armpit and stuff like that. And I think I had a fan going now that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And it seemed to help a little bit.
If it's mild, you might just like cool them down.
Right.
Like if
it took a while.
If they were just like panting really hard and seemed kind of like lethargic, they might be okay. But certainly if they have any more of the advanced signs, you'd want to get to your vet. And it's an emergency situation, like, above like 105, like the brain starts to deteriorate. So.
Oh wow. What is a normal dog temperature?
102.5 down to like 99.
Okay. And how do I know my dog's in trouble if I take their temperature? What would you say, 105?
If it's above 102.5. Now the caveat to that would be, like even a healthy dog, like if they get worked up, like sometimes we'll get the super excited German Shorthair Pointer or something that comes in, that's been barking the whole car ride over and then sprinting around the lobby, and they'll measure like 103 or something. But if it's elevated and you're noticing any signs, then
call the vet. Get there.
Yeah, I would institute the cooling measures. And
well, now not to pick on the veterinarians in this area, but weekends are bad because there's only one vet in the area that does anything as far as 24-hour care. So I've got to get myself up to Erie. What do I do driving up in the car? Put the air conditioning on?
Yeah, the first thing is, as a dog owner, you got to take a little ownership and be prepared. So prevent this stuff from happening, and then know where your closest emergency vet is should something happen. So as far as prevention goes, you want to get into that. If it's really hot outside, would you go sprint around?
No, and some people just think that that's okay.
Yeah, I think probably the most advice I give every day is just like, oh, if this were you, would you do this thing or not do this thing, Like if you were limping around, would you take a pain medicine because your leg hurt? And be like, yeah, of course I would take a Tylenol. Well, then your dog probably needs it, So same thing, if it's super hot and humid outside and you have a little pug that has no nose, don't go play fetch.
Or the Shih Tzus sometimes, or the other ones too.
That's the biggest thing. Or if you are going, say for a hike or something, take a lot of extra water. Have some way that you can pour a lot of water on your dog. Make sure there's a water source on the hike. Plan a hike that goes along a creek or a lake or something like that. So if you need to, you have access to water and that you have a way to get out quickly.
That would help. Huh. Well, people don't do that though.
They do not.
And a lot of people, and I see this, people that have watched the show knows that I drive school bus, so I'm driving a lot of places that people aren't normally there, and I see dogs that are chained outside and don't have proper care and stuff like that too. And there's a law, and we're going to read it to make sure we get it right, make sure everybody understands it. But it says that under the law, dogs can be tethered no more than 9 hours in a 24-hour period and must have water and shade. So they have to have shade. That's so important, and they don't. Oh, they're in the doghouse and it's not sunny in the doghouse. Are you nuts? That doghouse gets hot.
Yeah.
People don't realize that. and cannot spend more than 30 minutes in the temperatures above 90 degrees or under 30 degrees. Well, it goes above 90 pretty often around here, especially in the summer months. And it says here that you can't let them out like that for any long period of time. And they do, and people do. We talked about dogs must be secured. In addition, dogs must also be secured by a collar, not a pinch or a chain type collar. The tether must be more than 3 feet in length of a dog and 10 feet long, or the dog, or 10 feet long, and there cannot be excessive waste in the space. And so what do you do when you see that? And we see it all the time. This is the things that make me nuts. This is what prompts me to have programs like this, because I'm driving down the road and I see the dog on a short chain in the sun. I'm sure they've been there for a long period of time. So what are my options? What am I supposed to do? Here I am driving along and we see these things, and are there options? Are there things you can do? Are there?
Yeah, I think probably the best thing to do would be to call the local cruelty officer and report it, and they can come investigate it.
If he's not busy.
Yeah.
My theory also was to find out about the cops. What are the police doing? So in my merry little way, I decided I was going to check this out because this bothered me. And we're going to talk more about people that leave their dogs in the cars too. But let's just talk about the Libra law first, or the law involving tethering a dog. So most of the places around here don't have that much of a policy. I called the state police and I was put off and put off and put off. And then I finally gave up on them. And then I called Meadville Police and I think it's Mike Totten, and I talked to him and he did have some answers for me, a little bit of help. And I said, well, what do you do if you get a phone call? He said, honestly, down here, if we get a phone call in the city of Meadville, we will try and go right away to see what the story is. A girl that works for me and happens to be in one of the programs up at Pencrest, she had a dog that was in her backyard that was in a cage. Just in the corner of the shade. I said, you can't do that. That's against the law. And a lot of them I find, I'm sure if I had taken the time to check some of the other police departments, I would have found out that they probably don't have a set policy on it. They just hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That bothers me. That's the type of stuff that keeps me up at night, that there are dogs that are suffering like that.
I mean, this law that passed in 2019 is a good step in the right direction. I think Pennsylvania in general is behind as far as animal welfare stuff.
They really are.
So it was encouraging to see something like that, pass along. So hopefully it keeps trending in that direction.
Well, it's like the old story. You can have the law, but if no one's going to enforce it, it's not going to do us a whole lot of good. I think you probably have to sometimes, in today's world, you're even kind of hesitant to go to your neighbors and complain about something. God knows what will happen then. So you better call the police or something, but you can call the police and you can hopefully get some help on some of these issues. So that's just, we're talking here now, again, a dog that's tethered outside and what the rules are on that, and we will place that or put that on the DVD so you can look at that in general. Now let's talk about one of the things that people do. What about shaving a dog? Is that going to help? Can I shave my dog? My collie has fur about this long.
You can do whatever you want, but will it help it stay cool? No. Their fur is like insulation. So just like in your house, the insulation helps it keep warm in the winter, yes, but it also helps it keep cool in the summer.
I had a black dog one time, and I have a black dog now, and I'd put my hand up underneath all the fur to get to the skin. It was never hot.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, it was insulated. People say, well, I'm going to shave my dog. Should people shave their dogs?
I don't usually recommend it.
But people do it.
People do all sorts of
my dog.
things.
Oh, I know. You could probably be the cruelty officer and talk about some of these crazy things that people do.
Some things that actually will work. Provide access to fresh, clean water.
All right, that helps.
Change it regularly, right? Have a shady spot. So they can go in the sun, hang out, whatever, but also come back into the shade.
Some dogs like the sun.
Some do.
Some will sunbathe in it practically.
My dog will just lay out on the hot driveway all day, and I have to keep, Barley, come on, let's go in the shade.
Can they get sunburned?
They can get sunburned. So another thing you can do is put sunscreen on. I usually recommend infant, toddler, I think it's like zinc oxide sunscreen. I actually adopted a little Chihuahua Jack Russell mix from
Is that what you have
California.
Now?
No, I have
before.
a pit bull mix now.
Okay.
But he was from Southern California on the street, so he was in the sun all the time. And he ended up getting skin cancer on his belly from just laying out in the sun all the time. So it happens to dogs.
And you can use sunscreen.
Yep.
I also read somewhere that you could also put a very, very lightweight T-shirt on them.
Yep.
And something like that to keep the sun off. Because some of the nuts just go out there and lay in the sun.
Yeah. So of course there's all sorts of dog clothing that's available now, but you could also get like a toddler or small child's T-shirt, or depending on the size of your dog. Too. And that would work just fine. Huh. A lot of people have access to like a lake or a pool or something like that, and the dog will jump in. That's great, but make sure it's supervised. If they were to jump in and bump their head, or a wave come out of nowhere and hit them or something, of course that can cause its own problems.
I'd be more inclined to let them swim like a lake area where they can walk into the water than go off into a pool, because then you've got the problem that some dogs don't swim very well.
Right.
So not all dogs swim, do they?
No.
No, so you better get a life jacket on something.
Or they don't do it well.
No.
Be careful on hot surfaces. We don't walk around in our bare feet. Even people have nice calloused feet, right? We put shoes on. So a good rule of thumb is if you can't put your hand on the pavement and leave it there for 5 seconds, it's too hot for your dog to walk on.
People don't do that.
And you would be shocked how often you put your hand on it and get to like 2 seconds and are like, wow, that is toasty.
And then you're walking your dog down the middle of an asphalt area, and you wonder why the dog is probably pulling or probably trying to pull to get off the doggone asphalt.
Yeah, I've seen like burned foot pads and stuff
really?
Before. Yeah.
I can't believe that people do that.
I think people just don't know.
They don't think.
They just don't know about it. So a 5-second rule is a good test.
So take my hand, my bare hand, put it on the asphalt, see how long I can keep it there. That's an indication of how hot it is. Well, that's a good one too. That's an easy one.
Very easy.
Everyone can do that.
Yeah. Or, go in like an area with grass or something. I don't know. I don't want to walk around on like black asphalt with no shade, so that's kind of my barometer.
Right. If we had to walk the length of this room right here on hot asphalt, we couldn't make it, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And then we expect the dog to do that.
Yeah. And then should we get to the car issue?
Well, let's talk about the cars.
Okay.
The cars make me nuts.
So cars, it's basically like a greenhouse, right? It's a metal box with glass all around it. So even if it's not that hot, it's going to magnify the sun's rays energy and heat up a lot faster than some other shelter in a similar situation. So you've got the chart here.
We're going to put this also, so check this out. This will also be on the DVD, and hopefully you can do something and get the information. But you can find this online also and find out how much does a car heat up in how quickly a period of time. You want to kind of share this with
Yeah, so just like the lowest, the high extreme, if it's 90 degrees out, after 10 minutes, it's 109 degrees in your car, and after 30 minutes, 124 degrees in your car. The low end, which you'd be like, oh, that's not so bad, 70 degrees, that sounds nice, right?
Yeah, that's
After
bearable.
10 minutes, 89 degrees. After 30 minutes, 104. So after 30 minutes, it's above the high end of body temperature for a dog.
How much heat can a dog tolerate in that situation? Not very much, I wouldn't
Yeah,
think.
I mean, it depends on the dog, but if we say 102.5 is the high side of normal, anything above that, they're really going to have, they're working against, the temperature to try and keep under control.
And here we go again. This is that bothers me. I was down on Water Street about, had to be a month ago, and we were in an office building down there and came outside, and there was a pit bull mix in the back seat of a car. The windows were open this far. No kidding, 2 inches max. And here's a dog trying to get their nose as close to that as possible. So this friend was with me, and I said, we better find out who the owner is. And we must have gone into 5 offices. Some people didn't even care that we were in there asking. And not one person said anything about it. So I said, okay, let's call Meadville Police. Call Meadville Police. They said, I was on hold, of course. Now I'm thinking, I'm looking at this dog and I'm on hold. And I said, well, you've got a dog in a car down here on Water Street in some office buildings. And I said, someone needs to come down here and find the owners. And they said, is the dog in distress? And you know me, I sometimes have a smart mouth, and I said, well, why don't we wait until the dog is dead? And then you should come down. Honestly, and I thought, well, why is there not a policy on that? And what I found out, basically, is the police do not have much of a policy on that. You just can't depend on them to show up. And this is in defense of them now. There are so many things happening in the area on a constant basis,
Right.
whether there was one recently, somebody exposing themselves and stuff like that. They're so crazy running around dealing with that,
Yeah.
they don't have time necessary to go and deal with this.
Right. And it's also tricky for them because in the state of Pennsylvania, a dog or a cat is considered property. So that gets like messy for them, you know, as well on how they have to deal with that. So it's certainly tricky for the law enforcement.
Well, a lot of places, I've heard it happen at Walmart, where I've been in Walmart and I hear them get on the PA system and say, we need the owner of a white da-da-da-da with license plate, and go outside, your car's out there and you only have it down an inch or an inch and a half on the window or something like that. Now, how do we avoid that?
Yeah.
What's our best way?
I mean, leave your dog at home. That's
kidding.
It's pretty easy.
I'm amazed at the number of people who drag their dogs to these different places.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Taking my dog grocery shopping doesn't sound like a great time, but...
Well, I like whenever they take them grocery shopping and they leave the dog and they push them in the cart. Then I'm thinking, okay, and now I get that same cart. Wait a minute. Your dog was just in that cart. Why do I want my food in that cart now?
Yeah.
Leave your dog home.
So
you
yeah,
don't have
you
to
can
take
leave
him.
your dog at home. If you're going to take him and leave him in the car, look ahead at like the temperature forecast, because it might be, you know, 55 now, but if it jumps up to, you know, 75 degrees or something, and you decide to make an extra stop, you know, the temperature's going to keep bumping up. You could, you know, bring a family member or a friend that could, you know, walk them around in a shaded area
That would work.
while you do your stuff. You go to pet-friendly stores, you know, Tractor Supply,
Well, Tractor Supply,
Home Depot,
and what's the other one we always, Family Farm and Garden. They'll let dogs in, but
Yeah.
why? Why do you even want to take the dog out of your house? Your house is secure. Your house is probably a lot cooler than a lot of other places, and yet you drag your dog into these stores. And I love my dogs more than life itself, but I don't want to take them shopping with me.
Well, some people do.
I know, I just don't get that.
Or, you know, service dogs or something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of hard.
So yeah, you could, you know, take them to those places. There's a lot of outdoor restaurants or restaurants that have, you know, space outside, shaded space for dogs. I know the new brewery in Conneaut Lake, they have a nice big porch.
Right.
They've got water and stuff out there for the dogs. You know, it's shaded for the majority of the day. So, you know, they've advertised it like, you know, that we can't have them inside, but we have this nice area. There's fresh water.
Well, we've become a very pet-friendly area too. I mean, a lot of places you can take your dog, and as you say, that are friendly or dog-friendly. If anyone wants to know more about that, the place you can go is go to the Crawford County Convention and Visitors Bureau website, and on there they list all the places in Crawford County that they know of that are pet-friendly, and there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And people just don't take the time to check that out. So we're going to put a link on our program today so people can also check that out, or you can always just call up to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, or you can also go onto their website and find out that information of places you can take your dog that are totally, completely pet-friendly. Anything else we should tell these people?
I think that's about it. To summarize, you know, put yourself in the dog's shoes. If it's too hot for you, or you would be doing something extra like sunscreen, bringing extra water, a hat, you should be taking some sort of preventative measure for your dog. If you're keeping your dog outside, make sure they have access to water, shade, and limit the time out there. With the car, you know, really factor that in. Don't leave them in your car if you can avoid it. And certainly, if anything happens and you start to notice signs of heat stroke, don't use ice cold things, isopropyl alcohol on the feet, tepid water on the body, fan, and get them to your veterinarian.
One other quick thing, we used to be able to leave our dogs in the car by letting the engine run and leaving the air conditioning on, but some of the new cars turn off.
Yeah.
They won't run like for 20, 25 minutes, even though you don't care if it runs that long and you don't mind the gas. you can't do that anymore because, especially the ones I think that you use the automatic start on, I think they have a time frame on that.
Yeah.
So
and
that's
also,
not good too.
People outside the car don't know. So I've seen like news reports of, you know, like, oh, like the dog was in there with the air conditioning on, but then somebody saw it and came up and like broke the window because they thought it was just in a hot car,
Right.
you know. So.
Right. So that is a factor too. Okay, well, let's talk about something else. And we've talked about the heat stroke, the heat exhaustion, protecting your dog, walking the dog, first aid, and all those things. Let's talk real quickly about ticks and fleas because this is definitely tick and flea season.
Yeah, it's.
This is
I mean,
the time.
It's year round. All winter long, I had dogs coming in sick with Lyme disease, with ticks attached to them. If it's above freezing, the ticks are out and breeding. Okay, so how often from October to April was it above freezing? The majority of the time, right? So keep them on flea and tick prevention year round, please. Get them vaccinated for Lyme disease and do your heartworm prevention year round. Heartworm prevention kills the third life stage of the heartworm, which takes 6 months to develop. So
Oh, wow.
if your dog got bit by a mosquito and got infected with heartworm in June, July, the dose of heartworm preventative that you're giving in January, February is killing that third life stage that is now developed. So when people stop it during the winter,
I never stop it.
good for you.
Yeah, well, we also have therapy dogs. We push them to have them on all the time, too.
So keep them on that stuff year round. There's a vaccine for Lyme disease for dogs. It's safe, it's effective, and
what are the different choices for ticks and fleas?
oh, there's so many.
What are the most common?
The broad spectrum would be collars.
Was that Seresto?
Seresto is fine. I know there's a lot of bad press about it. It seems to be the actual product is fine. There's a lot of counterfeit ones. I see that people who get them online through any of the like pet pharmacies, big box stores, basically anywhere that's not your vet. And I'm not trying to like push, you know, buying stuff from your vet. But like we don't mark them up more than you can get them for on Chewy.com.
You and I had that conversation one time.
Yeah.
About why it's important with a lot of our shot. We might as well just digress for a minute here, but add this. We were talking about the fact that a lot of people go to some of the farm places and that stuff to get the vaccinations. And I said, why shouldn't I do that? Because I can walk in there, I can get the vaccination, and I can give it to my dog. And I think your comment to me at the time was, but that's not always regulated as much as it is at the vet's office.
Yeah, you don't know like if it was stored properly.
Or sitting in an 18-wheeler for a period of time.
You know, there's no follow-up. If your dog has a vaccine reaction, you can't take it back to Tractor Supply and be like, hey, can you fix this? You know?
Right. And that's, I told people that.
The other big thing is the companies will stand, you know, by their products. So typically, like if something happens, you know, the vet office will, you know, report the reaction or like, hey, this dog was getting the preventatives regularly, but it's still got Lyme disease. And oftentimes they'll, you know, do some compensation or help with a bill or something like that.
Lyme disease is primarily in the summer also, isn't it?
Yeah, I was seeing 2 to 3 cases of Lyme a week in December, January, and February.
My God. Well, that's not good.
No, it's above freezing, the ticks are out.
How do you find ticks? What's the best way?
It's tough.
I'm just thinking about it now.
Yeah, I mean, you can comb and brush, but some of these dog breeds have such thick fur that it's just real tough.
I have a collie. My collie's black. How am I going to find the tick or the flea? I'm not, or the ticks.
Yeah, the fleas are a little easier. You can look for flea poop or flea dirt. It looks like little flecks of pepper. If you like comb some off, put it on a paper towel, get it wet, rub it together, it'll turn red because it's just digested blood. But ticks can be tricky.
Wait, what was that? What's going to turn red?
The flea poop.
So if I see flea poop on my dog, I take it off, put it on a paper towel, rub it together, or a wet paper towel.
Get it wet, yeah.
Wet paper towel,
and
rub
it'll
it.
turn from black, and then it'll dissolve and become
I never
red.
knew that.
Yeah.
I'm like some novice.
That's how you can distinguish between regular dirt and flea dirt, aka flea poop.
I find it. I get a wet paper towel.
Yeah, so just like brush a lot, you know, and then like, you know, scoop the wad of hair off, and if it has like little black dots on it, and wet it down with alcohol or water, and then rub
it'll
it
turn red because it's blood. That's Well, this is like something I never knew. Oh my God! And as I said, I've had dogs all my life, and I never knew you could do that.
I'm glad I taught you something.
You did, Bob. You always teach me something. That's why I always find you whenever I want to know something new.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to tell people about these dogs and that and the heat? And what about cats?
Cats is exactly the same stuff as
Do they suffer from heat stroke and
Yep.
heat exhaustion? Are they crazy enough to have the same issues? Really? I didn't know that.
Yep. There's brachycephalic cat breeds with like the short squish nose,
is
so
there?
they're more
Oh.
prone to it. Of course, cats usually aren't, like outside playing fetch, but we'll see. I don't know, maybe a cat has an upper respiratory tract infection, and it's outside, it can't breathe really well, and it just, gets so weak that it gets stuck in the heat. Boom, it happens. Of course, in the cars, we'll see them like they're in their carrier getting transported somewhere or
That's
something.
really being confined and held in a
Yeah.
spot and not even be able to get out of it. That's really bad. Do you put, now that's another question while we've got a few moments here. They suffer from heat stroke and heat exhaustion also. What about, do they get ticks and fleas?
Yeah,
Can you put a collar on a cat?
they make Seresto collars for cats.
Do they?
Yep.
Something else I learned. But I don't have a cat. I just have barn cats. And I don't have...
You could domesticate one.
No, thank you. I will whenever I don't have dogs. So nothing else. So I think we're pretty good. Thank you very much for coming in. We had a lot of great information. And so again, please check out those different things we're putting on the DVD or on the My Dog and Me, and they can find on YouTube. Also, besides that, make sure that you check out the different places in the Crawford County and other areas that are pet friendly. You can always find that. Take your dog there if you must. And do a good job taking care of your dog in the heat. It's very, very important for you. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, see you later, next time.